A 16-year-old girl leaves home in 1979 to find her father. Police call her mother asking if she has permission to be across state lines. The mother says yes. That phone call becomes the last trace of Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs for 45 years. 45 years. No missing person report. No investigation. No search parties. Nothing. As if she simply evaporated from existence. In March 2024, a case file finally opened. The Clackamas County Sheriff's Office received their first official missing person report for Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs. The date on the report? March 15, 2024. The date she disappeared? June 1, 1979. How does someone stay missing for nearly half a century without anyone officially looking for them? Today, we're examining one of the most bewildering cold cases in recent memory. A case that challenges everything we think we know about missing persons investigations. This is the story of Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs, the girl who disappeared into thin air and stayed hidden in plain sight for 45 years. Let's start from the beginning. March 31, 1963. Norfolk, Virginia. A baby girl is born and named Pem Michelle Yates. Her birth certificate lists her father as J. Yates, a serviceman stationed in Norfolk at the time. But here's where things get complicated. The man listed on that birth certificate wasn't actually her biological father. Her real father was somewhere in California, a detail that would prove crucial to understanding why Pem made that fateful journey in 1979. Pem's early life was anything but stable. She moved constantly with her family from Virginia to various parts of Oregon and Washington. Her mother, Barbara Cecile Briggs, who later changed her name to Beau Monique Bradbury, struggled to provide stability for her children. These frequent relocations created a pattern of displacement that would define Pem's young life. By 1979, Pem was 16 years old, living in Oregon City, Oregon. She had distinctive features that made her easily recognizable: blonde hair, brown eyes, a crooked front tooth, and a prominent cleft in her chin. She stood between 5'3" and 5'6" tall, and weighed between 110 and 125 pounds. Most importantly, she carried the weight of not knowing her real father, a mystery that had haunted her throughout her teenage years. Sometime in early 1979, Pem made a decision that would change everything. She was going to California to find her biological father. Think about that for a moment. A 16-year-old girl in 1979, before cell phones, before the internet, before GPS, decides to travel hundreds of miles to search for a man she's never met. The courage or desperation that must have taken is almost unimaginable. On June 1, 1979, Pem's mother Barbara received a phone call that would haunt her for the rest of her life. A police department in California was on the line. They had encountered a young girl who claimed to be Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs. The officers needed to verify whether this minor had parental permission to be in California. Barbara confirmed that yes, Pem had permission to travel across state lines. The call ended. That was it, the last official contact anyone would have with Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs for 45 years. But here's what makes this case even more mysterious. Barbara was in the middle of moving when that call came. She was relocating to Goldendale, Washington, and had no permanent address to give Pem. Pem, meanwhile, was somewhere in California, with no fixed address either. Two people trying to find each other in a pre-digital world, both essentially homeless and adrift. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And still, no official missing person report was filed. How is this possible? How does a 16-year-old girl simply vanish without triggering any kind of official response? The answer lies in the complexity of family dynamics and the limitations of missing person protocols in 1979. Barbara had given permission for Pem to be in California. In the eyes of law enforcement, this wasn't a runaway situation or an abduction. This was a teenager with parental permission to travel. When Pem didn't come home, it may have seemed like she had simply chosen to stay in California, perhaps having found her father or decided to start a new life. But Barbara never stopped looking. Years later, she would reach out on social media platforms, desperately searching for any trace of her daughter. In one heartbreaking post, she wrote, "Please let this be you. I love you. Please come home. I have changed my name many years ago to Bo Bradbury, and not because I didn't want you to find me, but because I always hated my name. It reminded me of my dad. My given name is Barbara Cecile Briggs. You were born in Norfolk, Virginia. The name on your birth certificate is Pem Yates. If you're as captivated by this mystery as I am, make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to uncover some developments that will completely change how you see this case. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Barbara's social media posts reveal the anguish of a mother who spent decades wondering what happened to her child. She explained how she had moved multiple times, always hoping that Pem might try to find her. She detailed how she legally changed her name, worried that this might make it even harder for Pem to locate her. The posts paint a picture of a woman consumed by guilt and grief, desperately hoping that somewhere out there, her daughter was alive and looking for her too. But Barbara wasn't the only family member searching. Pem had a half-brother, Denny Wehrle, who also spent years trying to find his sister. According to posts on various missing person forums, Denny's girlfriend has been actively helping in the search effort, posting detailed information about Pem's disappearance on multiple platforms. The family clearly never gave up hope, even as decades passed without any leads. Here's where the story takes an even more tragic turn. Barbara Cecile Briggs passed away without ever knowing what happened to her daughter. She died carrying the weight of that unanswered question, that final phone call from California police, that last confirmation that Pem had permission to be there. A mother's worst nightmare, extended over decades. It wasn't until 2024, 45 years after Pem's disappearance, that someone finally filed an official missing person report. Think about that timeline. Pem disappeared in 1979. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989. The internet became widely available in the 1990s. September 11th happened in 2001. Social media exploded in the 2000s. Smartphones became ubiquitous in the 2010s. The COVID-19 pandemic swept the world in 2020. And through all of these world-changing events, through all of these technological advances that revolutionized how we find missing people, Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs remained officially invisible to law enforcement. The report was finally filed on March 15, 2024. Within months, Pem's case appeared on major missing person databases. The Charlie Project added her case. NamUs assigned her case number, MP18850. The California Department of Justice Office of the Attorney General listed her in their missing person database. Suddenly, after 45 years of official silence, Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs existed again in the system. But here's where this case gets even more intriguing. Soon after Pem's case gained visibility, amateur investigators on platforms like web sleuths began making connections that law enforcement had never considered. One connection in particular has captured the attention of the true crime community and represents perhaps the most significant development in this case since that phone call in 1979, Walker County Jane Doe. If you follow unsolved mysteries, you know this name. On November 1, 1980, the body of a young woman was found in a forest in Walker County, Texas. She had been beaten, sexually assaulted, and murdered. Despite decades of investigation, she has never been identified. She's estimated to have been between 14 and 16 years old at the time of her death. She had blonde hair and brown eyes. She was approximately 5 feet to 5 feet 6 inches tall. The physical similarities are striking, but it's the timeline that makes this connection truly compelling. Pem disappeared in June 1979. Walker County Jane Doe was found in November 1980. That's a gap of about 17 months. 17 months that could account for Pem living somewhere in California or elsewhere before ending up in Texas. Online investigators have noted additional similarities. Both had blonde hair and brown eyes. Both were in the same height range. Both were teenagers. Most significantly, Walker County Jane Doe was found with evidence suggesting she had been living a transient lifestyle, possibly hitchhiking or traveling with others. This fits with what we know about Pem's journey to California and her subsequent disappearance. The connection gained so much traction online that investigators submitted the potential match to various agencies. According to forum discussions, the tip was sent to Help ID Me, an organization that assists with identifying Jane and John Does. The Walker County Sheriff's Department has also been notified about the potential connection. What makes this connection even more compelling is the geographic plausibility. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, it wasn't uncommon for young people, especially runaways or those living transient lifestyles, to move between states. The journey from California to Texas, while significant, was entirely possible for someone hitchhiking or traveling with others. But here's what's truly fascinating about recent developments in this case. Advanced DNA technology that wasn't available in 1980 is now being used to try to identify Walker County Jane Doe. If investigators can extract usable DNA from Walker County Jane Doe and compare it to DNA from Pem's family members, we could finally have definitive answers. However, there's a complication. The DNA Doe Project, which specializes in using genetic genealogy to identify unknown remains, has indicated that they're already working on another potential match for Walker County Jane Doe. This means that submitting Pem as a potential match may have to wait until other possibilities are eliminated. This is where the power of modern technology meets the limitations of bureaucracy. We have the tools to potentially solve both cases, but the process requires patience and systematic elimination of possibilities. The developments in 2024 have breathed new life into both cases. Pem's official missing person report has generated renewed interest from both law enforcement and amateur investigators. The Walker County Jane Doe case has received additional attention as well, with multiple potential matches being investigated simultaneously. But let's step back and consider the broader implications of this case. How many other people have disappeared without official reports being filed? How many families are out there, like Barbara and Denny, searching for loved ones who exist in a kind of bureaucratic limbo? Pem's case highlights critical flaws in missing person protocols, especially as they existed in the 1970s and 1980s. The assumption that a teenager with parental permission to travel was not truly missing created a blind spot that lasted for decades. It raises questions about how many other cases might be lurking in this same blind spot. The case also demonstrates the power of modern databases and online communities in bringing attention to cold cases. Within months of being officially reported, Pem's case had generated more investigative interest than it had received in the previous 45 years combined. There's another aspect of this case that deserves attention: the role of name changes and family complexity in missing person cases. Pem was born Pem Yates, but she may have used the name Pem Warely. Her mother was born Barbara Cecile Briggs but later became Beau Monique Bradbury. These name changes, while perfectly legal and often for understandable personal reasons, can create additional barriers to reunification. In Pem's case, if she had tried to find her mother years later, she would have been looking for Barbara Briggs, not knowing that her mother had become Beau Bradbury. Similarly, if investigators in the 1980s or 1990s had tried to contact Pem's family about a Jane Doe, they might not have been able to locate them due to the name changes and multiple relocations. This case also illuminates the particular vulnerabilities faced by young people in the pre-digital era. In 1979, if you wanted to find someone, you relied on phone books, postal addresses, and word of mouth. If both parties were moving frequently and had no fixed addresses, finding each other became nearly impossible. Think about how different this story might have been if it had happened today. Pem would have had a cell phone. She could have used GPS to navigate. She could have stayed in touch with her mother through social media. She could have searched for her biological father online. The technological tools we take for granted today could have prevented this entire tragedy. The investigation into Pem's case is ongoing. The Clackamas County Sheriff's Office is now actively working the case. They have access to databases and investigative tools that didn't exist in 1979. They can cross-reference her case with unidentified remains from across the country. They can use genetic genealogy if DNA samples are available. But they're also working against time. Physical evidence from 1979 may no longer exist. Witnesses may have died or forgotten crucial details. The California Police Department that made that phone call may no longer have records from that time period. If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in seeing justice for Pem and answers for her family. Here's how you can help. Share this story, keep the conversation alive, and never underestimate the power of collective attention in solving cold cases. Recent developments have also sparked discussions about policy changes in missing person protocols. Some advocates are calling for automatic missing person reports to be filed when minors don't return home within a certain time frame, regardless of whether they initially had permission to travel. Others are pushing for better coordination between states when dealing with missing minors. The fact that California police contacted Oregon about Pem, but no follow-up system existed to track her ongoing status, represents a significant gap in the system. The case has also highlighted the importance of family members and friends in filing missing person reports. Too often people assume that someone else has already filed a report, or they worry about filing a report for someone who might not want to be found. Pem's case demonstrates that these assumptions can have tragic consequences. As we conclude this examination of Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs' case, we're left with more questions than answers. Is she still alive, somewhere in the world, unaware that people are looking for her? Did she find her biological father in California and decide to start a new life? Did something tragic happen to her shortly after that phone call in 1979? The connection to Walker County Jane Doe offers one possible answer, but it's just that, a possibility. DNA testing may eventually provide definitive answers, or it may eliminate that connection entirely, leaving us back where we started. What we do know is this. Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs was a real person with a real family who loved her. She had dreams and fears and hopes for her future. She made a brave or desperate decision to search for her father, and somewhere along the way she vanished from the world. Her mother died without answers. Her brother continues to search. And now, thanks to modern technology and renewed attention, investigators are finally looking for her with all the tools at their disposal. This case reminds us that every missing person represents a family in anguish, a community with questions, and a life that matters. Pem's 45 years of official invisibility don't diminish her importance or the tragedy of her disappearance. Whether Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs is Walker County Jane Doe, whether she's alive somewhere under a different name, or whether her fate remains unknown, her story serves as a crucial reminder of the importance of never giving up on the missing, and never forgetting that behind every cold case is a human being who deserves to be remembered, searched for, and hopefully found. If this case has moved you as much as it has moved me, please share this story with others. Sometimes the key to solving a decades-old mystery is simply getting it in front of the right person at the right time. Pem Michelle Yates-Briggs deserves to be more than a cold case file. She deserves answers.